Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Farrier. We continue to monitor and cover and hold discussions on the passage of Hurricane Beryl and the hurricane season. Hurricane Beryl forming much earlier than any other hurricane, making history that way, forming a hurricane of that strength, forming in June, in the beginning of the hurricane season. And that has occupied the attention of disaster management agencies and forecasters and just regular folks. It's something that we had not seen before in this part of the world. Joining me on the program now is Alan Stewart. He's the director of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. And while they did not get a direct hit from Beryl, they did feel some of the weather. And he's going to be talking to me about what's happening in Tobago now and also looking ahead to what's going to be anticipated to be a very long hurricane season that has started very early. Welcome to the program.
The pleasure is all mine, and I just want to maybe take this opportunity quickly to say to my colleagues at NABDA, I wish them all the best in their response and recovery effort. I know they have a very strong working team there, and I sympathize or empathize with what they have to deal with. But going forward, you mentioned, yes, I'm not sure if it's even safe to say we dodged the bullet or the bullet spared us. So we will awaiting what you call a Category 3 hurricane, nothing we have seen since 1963. And therefore, we know it would have caused a massive amount of devastation. However, we were not spared in the sense that the tropical storm winds barely would have passed just 42 miles northeast of Tobago, whereby we received the storm strength winds of the hurricane in some cases. And as a result of that, we have seen over 277 reports up to this hour that we speak. There were roofs that were blown off. Most of the reports, 93 of them, involved tree falling, and some of those trees fell on houses that caused, in some cases, minor damages, some major damages. We have so far dealt with about 50% of the roofs in doing what you call the damage assessments and needs analysis. So this is where we are. There were no deaths, there were no injuries, but we were impacted. We saw the sheltering of 130 persons. So we had to, this was one of the storms that we had, was to open all our shelters because we were preparing for the worst.
And she sort of just stuck on that 9 point something and headed straight for Carriacou, Petite Martinique, and the northern section of Grenada. As an official of emergency and disaster management, when you look at Carriacou, Petite Martinique, the devastation, what is NADMA dealing with right now? Where are they at in terms of just the mobilization, the relief, and the recovery? What's happening within the camp right now?
I think the relief effort is the relief effort will be in full swing. So what is happening now? You have roofs that were torn off completely. You had buildings that were devastated. So the supports of these buildings were flattened in some cases that we saw, and therefore the teams you will have. Or that is what Magna will categorize as a Category 3 event or a Level 3 response, which means Sedima and the rest of the region get involved. As you can see, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, based on the focal point, Trinidad and Tobago being the focal point, will give its support to Magna almost immediately. That is part of the protocols coming out of Sedima. So you find that they will send what you call an RNAT, which is a rapid needs assessment team into the country. I believe that team is on the ground as we speak, or would have been on the ground already doing the necessary rapid assessment to see what those needs are. And we have received those reports in the sense that the rest of the 17 Caribbean states have received those reports, and they will be sending relief. So relief effort is well on its way before you even get around to the recovery effort. The rebuilding process will be very difficult. So what is critical at this time is doing what you call DANA, damage assessment and needs analysis, to determine exactly what is needed to rebuild these communities that has been devastated by those winds coming out of Beryl and also storm surges. There would have been loss of electricity. So I know they are coordinating with the humanitarian. They may have set up what they call a HUC, a humanitarian coordination, where international reliefs and things like that will be pouring into the country. It has to be coordinated properly. One of the things that I saw in your in NAVNA, their situation report indicated that all reports, all aid needs to be addressed to the disaster office, and to me that is very crucial at this time, that we get it right and we ensure that we allow the process, especially the last mile of the way, where there are persons, there will be always special needs. And those special needs need special attention. And therefore, with the coordination of the relief effort, one needs to pay attention to what the disaster offices is saying in the countries that have been affected.
Now, one of the things that we're facing, because all communications went down for days, and it's coming back up, but it's spotty, and so a lot of people have not been able to communicate and reach out to their families to say, I am alive, or I'm unhurt, I'm okay. There's that. What does a disaster management agency do in an instance like that, where people are concerned about missing people and so on? What should be taking place there? Should there be sort of a register, or can anything be done?
Yes, there are procedural steps for those things, and I believe based on the experience of Magna over the years, as you know, Ivan, what treats us normally hits Grenada, or what missed us. So they are well acquainted with some of these things. It's not their first rodeo. It's just that this one is very devastating. This is like our 1963 Hurricane Flora event. And so what is critical right now is that you try to work with the teams that are affected. You would have asked a question, and that question lends itself to what I anticipate that they will need to do. I am not sure. You just need to just repeat a certain part of the question for me so I could get it right. If you can do that for me, I'll be helpful.
Okay, because I'm asking, because people are not getting a lot of news on individuals, and there are a lot of areas in Carriacou that were unreachable because of the heavy equipment issues. And so how does the disaster management agency bridge that gap so that people outside of Carriacou can at least know, okay, this person is safe, they're alive, they're well, even if they have no home? How do you get communication?
It's a common thing in the Caribbean islands when they're affected. It's called welfare communication. It becomes very important in this aspect, and this is where the auxiliary groups, such as in our country, they react. So the Amateur Radio Society of the country, and I know there is one there in Grenada, they need to lend that support to the disaster office, where they provide these welfare communications. So you go into the shelters and you make that communications available. It's done through HF radios, high frequency radios operating between 3 to 30 megahertz radios that uses the ionosphere. If you use the ionosphere to communicate information, not just within the country, but also you have interests that are in Trinidad and Tobago, that is in Barbados, that other countries that wants to know what is going on. People who may be studying at the university there in Grenada, who have interest, they want to know what's going on with those persons who have been affected and when there is no communication. So the Amateur Radio Society and the Citizens Band in the country provides that level of communication. Another thing that is taking place, and I'm hoping that CDMA would have brought that into the country as early as possible. I know that's a protocol. Something that is new is Starlink. Starlink is one of the communication, give Moss his thumbs up, for communication is so important. I always say in disaster management, there are the 3 C's and the 1 P. command, control, coordination, and communication, and effective planning. These are the hallmarks of effective disaster response and disaster mechanism. It must be built around
Starlink is up. Starlink, there is. I know that some Starlink devices were brought to Karakou, and they're up. In the very first, in the first 24 to 36 hours, maybe 48 hours on Karakou, Starlink was operating, but it was
Yes.
a boatman, a yachtman. He had Starlink aboard his vessel, and that was that was he had put it up on dry dock next to the port. And so I went to Karakou right after, 24 hours after Beryl hit, and I saw these people gathered around this yacht. And when I asked, they said, "Oh, that's the only spot where there's internet." And because he graciously made his available.
Let me tell you something.
But now officially, Starlink is up.
Yeah, let me tell you this. I remember when there were vital things of life, which was food, water, and housing. Communication has made it to that list of priorities that nations look forward to. The citizens of our nations across the world want to be able to communicate, and therefore I recall in 2018, that is when they made the big shift where you put balloons in the sky. I think Google was doing that to allow for internet connectivity for people in Puerto Rico to be able to communicate as a result of what happened with Maria during that impact. So you saw a twist and the use of technology, people recognizing how important telecommunications are in these events post of the impact. People want to know what is going on with their loved ones. And to me, that is critically important. It's important that nations in the Caribbean understand that, and even government build their capacity and allow communication to be one of the pillars of preparedness as we go forward. And I believe that the disaster office there is doing just that, where you will have the citizens band making a communication center that allows for information to come in and also to be disseminated as regards to those welfare traffic that you speak to in the region after this impact.
In charge of the relief efforts up on Karakou and Petit Martinique. And within the first 24 hours, one of the things that was occupying his mind, he was saying, I'm going back to the base now to set up a Starlink hub, hotspot, so that people can come and communicate with their loved ones. And of course, McIntyre, very experienced in disaster management. I'm sure you're familiar with him. So they were already trying to work on that, but communication still remains spotty on the two islands. And particularly
myself and McIntyre, I think he's a very senior police officer. We would have done a couple tours, and so I know he's all gringos. He knows the ropes and the ends. So I know definitely with the rest of Sidima behind him and the rest of the region that we will see the recovery process. It's the hardest part of all of this. I always say when the cameras, like you folks, disappear from the scene, things can become very, very upside down, and therefore the processes needs and the commitment made by international donors needs to be streamlined effectively so that the country can get back on their feet in the rehabilitation and the reconstruction process. But right now it's the relief. It's important for us to have a clean grip on the relief effort. And when I say we, I'm looking at the region itself from a Sidima point of view. But more importantly, the disaster office, there are those persons, and we want to make that appeal to them, who are at goodwill. Stars, movie stars, this, that, the other. They come onto the scene, but they don't know the system. And sometimes people, they make greater the problem instead of, even though their heart is well and they want to do something for the event. But you have to recognize, one, the sovereignty of the country and its government. You have to understand that there's a disaster management mechanism, and it's important that you fit into it smoothly so that things can go. The disaster office has the intelligence as to the persons and the areas that are hardest hit. When they do that rapid needs assessment, they will be able to say which are the areas to focus on, which is the areas that need electricity, not just the person who is making most noise.
The most noise, but to deploy where
Yes,
deploy where the needs are.
That's right.
Now I want to ask you about, it is July, and we've already seen this ferocious system come through. And in Grenada, in parts of Grenada, Carriacou, Petit Martin, people are in homes without roofs. So that part of the process has to be very quick as well. It's not just about relief with food and clothing and water sanitation pills and desalination plants. We have people who are living in unsound structures, half-built structures, and shelters that have also been compromised because of the storm. How do they? What's the approach here that should be taken from a disaster management point?
It's a two-pronged approach, in the sense that, if you notice, I've been talking to relief and I've been speaking to recovery. The recovery effort, because of the time of the season, needs to be very rapid, in the sense that it requires careful analysis in terms of the engineering that you put into the restructuring process. But I am saying this to allow that reconstruction effort to be well done, in the sense that, and speedily, what you have is a number of relief pouring into the country. Building materials become part of that as well. And with these building materials, we need engineers to come into the country to ensure that the reconstruction effort be done in a particular way, and also at a particular timing. Because what you have a storm that has devastated the country. And probably in a matter of only days, we saw a following storm follow the same path. You follow me? So you had a situation where here was Beryl, and in less than 3 days' time, another system, tropical disturbance, passed through the very, if not the same path, but close to it, which means, therefore, that in one way or the other, to the north of the storms are always ferocious. And therefore, had that turned into a storm again, then you have debris flying all over the place. So the reconstruction method have to be very aggressive, in the sense that you have to harden these structures as quickly as possible. And it speaks to also what you call debris management. Debris management will become a major challenge for the country, in terms of where do you house and how do you house or these debris that you're moving in order to clean up the place. So that is the kind of help Grenada and St. Vincent needs right now, where you bring in rapid equipment that could afford, and manpower that could afford, to do the reconstruction in a timely manner, to prepare it, because the season is still early. And the Met services.
So this cannot be, let's ask people in Grenada to go volunteer. We need a lot more resources and assets and manpower to be able to do this professionally, properly, and rapidly, because there are few things
and rapidly. It needs to be, yes, exactly. It requires, this is one of the early storms in the Caribbean, and as a result of that, you are seeing these storms are developing a little south. You know, there was a time, even here in Trinidad and Tobago, they used to think that, Trinidad is God country, and but I had to remind my colleagues that, say, in 1933, a storm passed through not just Trinidad, but the southern side of Trinidad. And you're seeing that repetition happening again with these storms that are forming way south of the equator. You have, so anything that is of interest to us between 9 and 7 degrees north of the equator must be of concern to us. And we are seeing the Met services, even our colleagues at CMIOH, have indicated, that is the Meteorological Service, Hydrology and Meteorology in Barbados, they have pointed out that it's an above average season. You will see an unusual behavior of the weather, and you have seen it already, where the ferocity of these storms is not just winds. I mean, I have never seen a storm behave like that in my life, where it was almost as though we were going to be hit with a Category 4 hurricane. The last we have seen that was in 1963. So you've seen climate change and climate adaptation becomes very, very important. And
so let me ask you, as with the season this early, what are disaster management directors such as yourself in Tobago and Dr. Terence Walters here in Grenada and the rest. What are you saying now? What are you thinking? How are you preparing and presenting? I mean, you've got your protocols and everything like that, but you're dealing with, Beryl has said everything that we have been saying is true. It is possible. It can happen. There must have been some sort of shift in your perspectives, in your approach
correct.
to the season.
One of the things that we did, because it's good to share these examples. What we did here in Tobago, we had the experience of 1963. We did what you call a CERT 1000, 1000 strong. That's the name of the program. The EU provided the funding. We were able to make the case to seek to, we have over 600 registrants as volunteers that are providing. The objective is to tool them to make sure that they are tooled. And I am quite positive, more than ever, the government has woke up. They know exactly it can happen and it will happen. And therefore, resilience is the name of the game. The United Nations have been pushing what you call making cities resilient. It's all about resiliency, not what happened to you, but how you respond to it. What do you have in place? And then when I speak about the CERT 1000 strong, I'm speaking about where quantities matter, where quantity is the quality. Out of that program, I coined that idea that, quantity is the quality here. Sometimes we twist it the other way around, but really and truly to respond in these communities, way up north, Saturn, I think that's the name of the Saturn, is the name of the area just north of Grenada, a village on that end. I have colleagues living up there on Zello. I speak to them every now and again.
You mean on Grenada?
On Grenada. That's just yeah, good. So it requires, we now need to build capacity as much as possible and get numbers, prepare communities to take care of themselves, prepare communities, give them the tools, give them the training, and give them the PPEs that are necessary. It's not just having, in less than a year, we were able to get 600 registrants, which is good. We were able to train 200 of them.
But is there anything specific that you've had to change with the arrival and the passage of Beryl? Is there anything that disaster management officials in the region have had to rethink?
Yes.
Specifically because of this event a few days ago.
Yeah, this event has caused us to do what you call, you have to start planning for a catastrophic event. Think that's a thinking that you have to have. You have to start identifying alternative communication methods. For example, we have employed what you call ALE. ALE is is a type of communication in the HF band that you automatically link establishment. It's that what it's called. And I know CDMA have bought into it as well. So you're going to see these things happen. You're going to understand the importance once again of HF communication. We are quite accustomed to the VHF radios and the trunking radios and all these things. But these things will not stand up, and therefore we have to go back to the drawing board and use the technology that is available today, such as Starlink and these other systems, to ensure that we do it right. We also have to insist. I remember since 2004, the region has discussions on what you call cubic, which speaks to the issue of residential properties across the region being built to building codes. Building codes and land use policy is one of the areas that we have to make good on our promises and make sure that the legislation support these processes as to how people build and where they build. This is critically important as we go forward. Otherwise, we will not be demonstrating what you call climate adaptation. That is what adaptation. You have to change.
I want to thank you so much for joining me here on The Narrative. Alan Stewart, Director of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. And good luck to you and all the other directors across the Caribbean. It's going to be a bumpy ride this season, as forecasted. Thank you so much for joining me on The Narrative, sir.
The pleasure is mine. Have a good one, and we wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you. This is the narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Fario, speaking there with Alan Stewart, who is the director of TEMA, the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. Tobago dodging Beryl by a hair's breadth and heading straight to Carriacou and Petit Martinique and devastating, virtually shredding those two islands. The relief and recovery efforts now underway by the Grenada government and other agencies. More when we come back.